You wake up tired. You check your phone before your feet hit the floor. You have a job, a commute, a list of things to finish before the sun goes down. You assume this is just what being human looks like. But for most of human history, none of this existed. No alarms, no deadlines, no 40-hour weeks. And the strangest part isn't that ancient humans worked less than you. It's what they did with all that extra time. You've probably pictured it before. A caveman crouched behind a rock, spear in hand, waiting hours for a mammoth to wander by. Exhausting, dangerous, non-stop. That image feels obvious. It's in every documentary, every textbook illustration, every cartoon about early humans. But it's wrong. Almost completely wrong. In the 1960s, an anthropologist named Richard Lee decided to actually test this assumption. He didn't guess. He didn't theorize from a desk. He went and lived among the Juhonsi, a hunter-gatherer people in the Kalahari Desert, and he counted their hours, every task, every day, hunting, gathering, cooking, resting. What he found broke the myth wide open. Adults worked around 15 hours a week to meet their basic needs. 15, not 50, not 60. 15, let that sit for a second. You work more in 3 days than they worked in an entire week. So what happened to the rest of their time? This is where it gets interesting, because the rest of the time wasn't spent surviving. It was spent living. Anthropologist Marshall Sahlins looked at data like Lee's and coined a phrase that still makes historians uncomfortable. He called hunter-gatherer societies the original affluent society. Not affluent because they had more stuff, affluent because they had more time. Sahlins argued that affluence isn't about producing more. It's about wanting less and having enough of it. By that definition, ancient humans weren't scraping by. They were, in a strange way, rich. You might be picturing them lying around doing nothing. That's not quite it either. Their days were full, just full of different things than yours. Mornings were often spent foraging, and foraging wasn't grueling. It was social. Groups moved together, talking, teaching children which plants were safe, which roots were sweet, which berries would make you sick. Gathering food and gathering conversation happened at the same time. There was no separation between work and socializing. It was all woven together. Afternoons had a different rhythm. Camp life, storytelling, tool repair, naps when the heat made hunting or gathering pointless anyway. Researchers studying groups like the Hadza in Tanzania, including work led by Kristen Hawkes, found something else surprising. A huge amount of daily food, especially calorie-dense food, wasn't even coming primarily from young hunters chasing big game. Grandmothers gathering tubers and feeding grandchildren played an outsized role in keeping the group fed. The whole manhunts, that's how humans survive story, leaves out most of the actual labor. And then there were the evenings. This is the part that tends to surprise people most. Around the fire, after food was shared, ancient humans talked not about the day's tasks, not logistics. They told stories. According to research by anthropologist Polly Wiesner, who studied conversations among the Juhonsi both during the day and at night. Daytime talk was mostly practical, complaints, gossip, coordination, but nighttime talk transformed. It shifted toward myths, distant kin, the movements of animals, the meaning behind the stars overhead. Firelight, it turns out, changes what humans talk about. It pulls conversation away from the immediate and toward the imaginative. Think about what that means. Every night for tens of thousands of years, humans gathered around flame and did something no other animal does. They built shared fictions, origin stories, warnings wrapped in narrative jokes, songs. This wasn't leisure in the lazy sense. This was the birthplace of culture itself, happening every single evening, as routine as brushing your teeth is to you now. So if they weren't hunting 16 hours a day and they weren't struggling to survive every waking moment, why do you still picture it that way? Part of the answer is agriculture. When humans transitioned to farming, something counterintuitive happened. Life got harder, not easier. Farming demanded constant repetitive labor. Planting, weeding, harvesting, storing, defending stockpiles from raiders and rot alike. Skeletal remains from early farming communities show more signs of malnutrition and physical strain than remains from earlier foraging groups. The agricultural revolution is often taught as a leap forward in terms of daily human well-being. For a long stretch, it may have been a step back. The other part of the answer is projection. Modern life is demanding, so it's tempting to assume all of human history was equally demanding, just with worse tools. It's comforting in a strange way to think our ancestors suffered so we could have it easier. But the data doesn't support that story. Comfort, connection, and unstructured time weren't modern inventions. They were the default setting for most of human existence. What's actually unusual, historically speaking, is you. Your calendar, your inbox, your sense that rest has to be earned. There's something else worth noticing. Ancient humans didn't need vacations. They didn't need to unplug because they were never plugged in to begin with. Their days already contained slowness. Their evenings already contained connection. The very things you now schedule, pay for, and feel guilty about wanting, like rest, storytelling, and unhurried conversation, used to just be Tuesday. This doesn't mean their lives were easy in every sense. Disease could be devastating. Infant mortality was high. Conflict happened. Life was in many ways precarious. But precarious and exhausting are not the same thing. They faced real dangers with far more free time than you'd expect, not because the world was gentle, but because their relationship to work was fundamentally different from yours. They worked to meet needs, not to meet quotas. Once the need was met, the day was theirs. So what does this mean for you? Scrolling through this on a device that didn't exist 20 years ago, in a schedule that would be unrecognizable to 99% of the humans who ever lived. Maybe it means the exhaustion you feel isn't some ancient inheritance. It's not just human nature to be this tired, this busy, this behind that framing. Let's modern systems off the hook. The 15-hour workweek wasn't a fantasy. It was for most of history, simply how things were. What changed wasn't human capability. It was human circumstance. Maybe it also means that the parts of your life that feel like luxuries, unhurried meals, evenings with people you love, stories told just for the sake of telling them, aren't luxuries at all. They're closer to your baseline. They're what your brain and body were shaped for, over hundreds of thousands of years, around fires you'll never see, by people whose names are lost but whose evenings, it turns out, might have looked a little more like rest than yours does. You wake up tired, but maybe the goal was never to work harder to earn stillness. Maybe stillness was the starting point all along, and everything since has just been the story of how you lost it.